Hamas has a new leader, and that could mean a setback for ceasefire talks aimed at ending the war in Gaza. This is Yahya Sinwar. He's now the face of the militant group. He was also a key planner in the October 7th attacks on Israel. He is considered more extreme than his predecessor, Ismail Haniyeh, who was killed in Iran last week by a presumed Israeli strike. Iran has vowed to retaliate for that attack. Meanwhile, over on the Lebanese border, Israel and Hezbollah are exchanging more fire after Israel killed a top Hezbollah commander. The U.S. government says it's currently engaged in intense talks.
This is obviously a very delicate time for the region. Tensions are high. We are in the final stages, hopefully, of a ceasefire deal, and escalation has the potential to make every problem the region faces worse. And so the message that we are impressing upon everyone in the region is that no party should take any steps to escalate this conflict.
Rhonda Sleem is a senior fellow and director of the Conflict Resolution and Track 2 Dialogues program at the Middle East Institute. And John Allen is the former Canadian ambassador to Israel, and they both join me now. Hello and welcome to Power and Politics. So let's start with Sinwar, a key architect in that October 7th attack. John, Israel's foreign minister called his appointment, quote, another compelling reason to swiftly eliminate him. What do you make of his election as leader?
Well, I think it's a message that Hamas is sending, and to some extent it could be Iran as well, that you can kill one or two leaders, but there are others that can take their place. And in this case, unfortunately, as was mentioned, you're replacing a slightly more moderate leader, albeit one with blood on his hands, with a hardliner responsible for October 7 and many, many other deaths of Israelis. And it's unfortunate because it's only going to confirm to Israelis that making a deal with the Palestinians is not possible. And as we know, ultimately that is the only way that we're going to have peace and security in the region. But his appointment is an obstacle.
Well, further to that, Rwanda Secretary of State Anthony Blinken in the U.S. has labeled Sinwar, quote, the primary decider when it comes to a ceasefire, a primary decider for Hamas, that is. The other primary decider is the government of Israel. And as I said previously, they are labeling him an arch-terrorist and suggesting he needs to be eliminated. So how do you foresee this impacting the ceasefire negotiations?
I don't think it's going to impact it a lot because all the previous negotiations that have taken place, including the temporary ceasefire that was reached last November between Israel and Hamas with the mediation of the Americans, the Qataris, the Egyptians, the negotiations on the Palestinian side were mostly done, indirectly by Sinwar. He's the ultimate decider, as Secretary Blinken said. So Haniyeh might be the face of the negotiating team, but the real decider on that negotiating team has been, was, and will continue to be Sinwar.
But Rhonda, as a follow-up, John describes his appointment as an obstacle to reaching a ceasefire. So at this point, how optimistic are you that they are going to be able to reach a deal?
Look, I think the primary obstacle right now to reaching a deal is the Israeli Prime Minister. It's not the appointment of Sinwar. As I said, Sinwar has been making the decision about the negotiation until now. And as of recently, the deal was approved by Hamas. The latest addition put forward by Netanyahu on to the elements of the deal, the additions to the different components of the deal, are the ones that are delaying, getting to yes. And so, and it's clear that the Israeli Prime Minister is not interested in reaching a deal. Otherwise, he would have done by now.
Well, John, the U.S. State Department says a ceasefire deal is in its final stages. They've been saying that for some time, but other observers say that the negotiations have been stalled, as Rhonda points out. And in the meantime, there are fears that things could escalate. For example, between Israel and Hezbollah and Israel and Iran. At this point, are we closer to that feared all-out regional war than we are to a peace deal?
Well, we're clearly closer to an escalation and we're closer to a regional war. The Americans, in particular, and others are doing everything they can to try and ensure that it remains as a tit for tat and doesn't get out of hand. That is clearly the main worry. My own take is that Hezbollah does not want a major war. They know what will happen. They remember 2006 well. I doubt that Tehran wants a major war. So I think they're trying to figure out how they can respond to this great embarrassment in Tehran and to the assassinations that have just taken place, perhaps without killing a lot of people in Israel, because if by chance they do end up killing, hitting a school, hitting an apartment, then there will be the inevitable response by Israel, which could lead to further escalation.
Well, the margin for error is virtually non-existent in a situation such as that. Rhonda, what John describes as that great embarrassment is a reference to the suspected assassination by Israel of Hania on Iranian soil. The Iranian response is expected at any time. What do you expect that retaliation to look like, and how likely is it we will again see a strike directly on Israeli territory as we saw in the spring?
It is almost certain that we are going to see a direct Iranian strike on Israel. Now, whether this Iranian strike will be just Iran alone or as part of the whole axis of resistance response, meaning Hezbollah will join in, the Houthis, the Iraqi militias that are allied with Iran will join in as well. It's not clear, but it's almost 99.99% certain that there will be an Iranian strike on Israel. Once the supreme leader said they will strike Israel directly, it becomes regime dogma and they have to do it. The question, as John said, how can they pull off a response that is qualitatively different from what they have done in April? Because their takeaway now from the April strike is that strike was not enough to change Israeli cost-benefit calculus about actions targeting the Iranian regime, as we have seen with the with Haniya's assassination on Iranian territory. So how can they pull off a response that is qualitatively different from April without, pushing the region into a regional war? That's a very hard balancing act to pull off, and that's where we are about to witness, I think, in the next coming days.
John, what sort of position does that put the U.S. government in? They've been quite clear that they will help defend Israel, but they seem to want to signal that they will not help Israel go on the offensive either.
The U.S. is in a very tough position. You've got a presidential candidate, just named her vice president. They're heading into a variety of key states in the election, including Michigan, which they almost need to win, along with Pennsylvania. And having a war in which America would be involved in defense of Israel is absolutely what they don't want. In the most recent phone call between Biden and Netanyahu, the Israeli readout was, we asked for more arms and the U.S. will support us. The American readout was, we need a ceasefire and you've got to get your act together, Bibi, because you're clearly not delivering on what you said you were going to deliver on. So the Americans are concerned. On the other hand, they've brought a couple of aircraft carriers into the region. They've got fighter jets in the region, and they're trying by this show of force to send a signal that another barrage of rockets from Tehran is not a great idea.
But on that same note, Rhonda, I want to turn to you, because how much credibility then does the United States have as an advocate for peace if it is also taking this stance in preparing for war?
Right now, as far as regional actors, and I'm not including Israel, I'm talking about Iran and the
Qatar,
the rest
Egypt.
of the Iran. Most of them, Qatar, Egypt. Iran. The U.S. is not seen as a credible mediator, as somebody that can be trusted to deliver, Bibi Netanyahu to the negotiation table, to a deal, and for when U.S. officials talk about a ceasefire deal, part of that ceasefire deal are going to be guarantees given by the mediators that Israel is going to live by the terms of the deal. And right now, there is no credibility about the U.S. as a guarantor, but by, for example, Iran, by Hamas, by Hezbollah, is that they have seen the U.S. unwilling to put any pressure on the Israeli prime minister to basically change his negotiation behavior, and unwilling to condition military aid to Israel to change in his behavior that makes a deal become more of a possibility. And so credibility as a guarantor, credibility as a mediator has really taken a major hit as far as the United States is concerned in the region.
Well, other actors are increasing pressure on Israel internationally. For example, Turkey officially filed today to join South Africa's case at the International Court of Justice against Israel over its conduct of the war in Gaza. Now, Israel has reacted, denouncing Turkey and its president as a dictator, but clearly there is pressure increasing. John, do you see this pressure having any impact on the way Netanyahu is conducting this war?
No. The only pressure that is going to have any effect is a negative kind of pressure from his ministers, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, and the right wing of his party on the one hand, and the Americans on the other. The Americans may not have credibility with Hezbollah and Hamas and Tehran, but they are still the only players that can move Israel. They still hold the card of weapons supply, especially offensive weapons supply. And Israel is more than aware that they're going to need American support if they end up in a 3 or 4 front war going forward. It's not easy to pressure Bibi Netanyahu. We've seen it. He's done everything possible to stay in office, and he will continue to try and do that. You can't count the Americans out, because they're the only ones that have any leverage here.
Rhonda, we've got time for a very quick last word to you, 15 to 30 seconds if you'd like.
Well, they have definitely leverage. A U.S. president always has leverage and tools at his disposal to exercise this leverage. But we have not seen this president exercise this leverage willingly, and he has not done that so until now.
All right. Thank you, Rhonda Saleem and John Allen. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.